Folks, welcome to the Future of Faith podcast. I'm Josh Packard, the co-founder of Future of Faith.
I'm Keidron Boston, ministry practitioner here at Future of Faith.
In each episode of this podcast, we're going to break down one key research finding from our brand new study about listening and faith formation. I'll give you the national perspective, trends and insights.
I take Josh's big fancy data and make it, useful. Spoiler alert. Not everything works, but I'll keep it real with how it actually plays out in ministry.
That's right. We believe listening isn't just a skill, it's a sacred tool.
So let's talk about what happens when listening leads the way.
This is the Future of Faith. Hey folks, welcome back to the Future of Faith podcast. I'm Josh Packard, co-founder of Future of Faith, and I've got here with me today Megan Bissell, who is the co-founder and executive director of Future of Faith.
That's me. Hi.
It's you. This is a special bonus episode for this first season. Those people who've watched the whole series, or if you go back and watch the whole series, you'll know that for the majority, or for the rest of the other episodes of this season, it's been me and Keidron Boston, our ministry practitioner, talking through one data point from our study about listening and faith formation and what it means at a sort of big national picture level, about, what does this tell us about trends among faith and belief and, different generations, et cetera. And then Keidron coming around that and talking about what this means for practitioners, boots on the ground, doing real ministry. But today, in this bonus episode, what we wanted to do is to sort of pull the curtain back a little bit and think about how this project even came to be, and probably just as importantly, why it came to be in this current form. So if you're not familiar, we're talking about this listening and faith formation research project. You can find all the details on our website at www.futureoffaith.org. And there's you can go through the tabs. You can call it the Sacred Listening Study that you can see. So Megan, thank you so much for joining us. Can you just talk a little bit to get us started here about why this particular project was emerged for us very early on as okay, this is the first thing we want to do at Future of Faith?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, the easiest answer is there was not enough information in the world about the impact of listening generally. There was lots of studies about how to listen or active listening skills, but nothing that gave us the outcomes of listening, the variables of what happens when you listen, and specifically in the faith space. We have nothing that shows that a direct outcome of listening is faith formation. And so we were like, well, let's start asking some questions there. It's the place where we really felt called listening was. And so we thought, well, we're the people to do it. So we leaned in. Decided that was...
Well, and I always think of good research projects are ones where you were finding out the answer to a genuine question.
Yeah.
And for me, this was I had suspected based on anecdotal things that we had heard. I think for some of the data that you had collected for other projects before, we had sort of felt like there was an impact on faith by simply sitting and listening, but we didn't know. Nobody had, there's a million things to do in the world and nobody had gotten to this one yet. And so
and we were hearing, because we're listening people, we were hearing from folks in the field and our friends and the people we were talking to as we were putting this together. We were listening to their questions, and they had the same kind of questions. We suspect and understand that there's a link between listening and trust and relationships and all those things. That we don't have the thing to stand on that says that this is true. And we had seen all these people that we super trust. We built a whole newsletter around this. All these people that we love and admire and trust were veering this way in their ministry. And we're they couldn't all be doing this just wrong. Right.
Yeah, and it's unlikely that they're all wrong. So I wonder what they're picking up on.
Exactly.
Okay, so that's why that gives a little insight into why we start with listening at Future of Faith. It's possible down the line that we. Listening is not the only thing that we will ever do at Future of Faith, but for right now, that was the beginning. It's where we'll be for quite some time. But this is we approach this a little bit differently. So first, walk us through, Megan, when we talk about the data for this study, what kind of data, did we get? And then tell us the story of what makes this project different. You and I have done dozens, maybe 100 or more projects over this one stands out as being different than all the others.
Yeah, this one was like it was a complete counter narrative to let me tell you. It felt counterintuitive to do the whole thing, and I'll get to that in a minute. The data is we have both quantitative and qualitative, and we did a large sample of ages 13 to 55, and then we oversampled for teenagers because a lot of our partners work with young people, and we really wanted to lean into that space of like how do you do this when they're being formed at younger ages. And so we put out a national study, nationally representative, in survey form. And then we also recruited 20 to 25. I can't remember where Lauren landed because we kept asking her to do more interviews, ages ranging 18 to 55, to tell their stories firsthand about the impact of listening in their lives, how it affected their relationships, their spiritual growth. So we have we have the best quotes. I mean, after Lauren, she, got some traction with people and was really figuring out like what we were hoping to accomplish there. The interviews are spectacular, but we've got a huge study. The survey was, we started with a number of different metrics that we wanted to lean into. Like we looked at everything from the wellness and faith formation scales and the Baylor study, and ultimately what we came up with was we just needed to like pick some of the aspects of listening, like the behaviors, activities, perceptions, how they lean into trust, and specifically, the behaviors that led to people feeling heard.
Yeah.
And that's how we built the questions.
Yeah, I think we knew pretty early on that trust was going to be a part of that story.
Yeah.
And that does end up becoming a pretty important, one of the things that it ends up becoming a pretty important data point, because one of the things that I was always lacking when I would give keynotes or presentations, workshops, webinars, whatever, was this ability to say like, okay, well, there's all this data showing that people don't trust institutions. We presume then that given that they still interact with each other in the world, they don't just like, it's not mass chaos out there,
Right.
everything. That they must trust something, and the only thing left is individual, relationships. But we didn't know that, and so the ability to collect those data as well to close that gap of like, oh yeah, yep, here it is, pretty clearly in the data. Trust levels for institutions historically low, just like Gallup and Pew and everybody else says. But also then we're able to show that 75+% of people saying that they have high, very high levels of trust for people they have a relationship with. And so it was just, we knew that. I mean, we suspected that, but it's just nice to be able to close that gap. So we knew trust was going to be part of that story. We knew that we wanted real, actual behaviors that made people feel like they were listening, so we weren't just guessing anymore. All those became very important.
Yeah, they did, and tell a pretty fantastic story about listening and its impact.
But this one took forever. This is what I mean by this being different for us. Like,
yeah, it did.
You would think after all these years we could have done this a lot
faster.
We could have done it a lot faster.
We have, and most of the project we do, we can get to pretty quick. We've got a locked in process, and we know how to do this. We felt very differently about this because we wanted to build it with the approach and the philosophy that we were embodying in Future of Faith, which is listening. We wanted to listen to more people, be really collaborative. We intentionally went slow. And the way that we did that was, and we didn't want to be two sociologists in a room talking about this thing that's impacting the faith world. So we needed to listen to people, ask them what questions they really wanted to hear. And so that became coalition building. We decided to bring partners in, invite them to be involved at various levels. We asked for tons of feedback about the kinds of questions that they had, the things that were, keeping them up at night, what they really needed to know in order to build their programs and their ways forward and their new approaches. And so it was really slow because when you involve lots of other people and doing that very intentionally,
it ended up being like 15 different organizations or something.
I think the last time we put logos together, it was like 20.
20.
Yeah, 20.
A lot of emails and phone calls and people who, we are fully, I think, cognizant of the fact that we think this work is very important and we're thrilled to have these people on board. It's also not their thing.
Right.
So
they don't.
You send out an email, it's not coming back to you in an hour.
exactly right. And nor did we expect it to. Like,
No,
we did that.
no.
We let the timeline drive itself, which is a
Yeah.
very, again, very counterintuitive to thing for you and I to do generally, and for researchers to do, like that, are like trying to get to an answer quickly. But we weren't trying to get to an answer quickly. We wanted to get to good answers with people who were invested in the answers. So we took our time. We moved really slow. We, asked folks questions, what they wanted to know. We had a lot of feedback, a lot of back and forth. And that ultimately made for a better study, because we've got a budget buy-in, we've got great perspectives, we have things that we would not have thought of otherwise. And we did what we said was important, and we listened.
Yeah.
So,
and I think in a world that often sees, even within a religious group, like within Christianity, the world often sees the various factions as fractured, as not playing nice with each other, as they can't even talk or collaborate. I think it was, I know it was important for the two of us. I hope it serves as somewhat of a model. Like, these things can be done. We look at all these people who are working together, and, I don't think any of our partners needed to know that they could work with each other. I think they already knew that. But to signal to the rest of the world that, like, this isn't as divisive as it might sound like it is in newspaper headlines, like it's 1985 again. But you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. And it demonstrated the values of relationships first, right? Like, if people are truly trusting relationships more than they are institutions, then that's the thing we need to uncover, is like, how to relationships first, make sure that we're listening to our friends, make sure that we're paying attention to each other and building important relationships. And that was the thing we hoped to get out of it the most. And I think that did happen. Yeah.
Sure. I agree. And what would you, when you think about how to use this data, one of the things we've always talked about, Megan, is that we want to do research that's useful, not interesting. Hopefully it's both, but if we have to pick, we would choose for it to be useful. What do you think are the limits here? Like, how should people use these data? When it's going to go up on the website, people will be able to see all the findings and the tables and things like that, the graphics. What's the limits here? What's the utility of it?
Well, the limits to start there, because we have to, as researchers, acknowledge the limitations of the study. We're calling it a pilot. It's a lot bigger than a pilot. There's a lot of data there. But it's the first word, not the last word. This is the first piece of the conversation about listening and relationships and faith formation. So the limitations are that we still have more questions to ask. And any good study will not only give you things that you can use, but also encourage more questions. They seed more questions for the future. Yeah. We can ask them if that did happen. And we hope to use this as a launching point for future studies. Of course, like, we'll keep doing this until we're exhausted of talking about listening, or people are all listening to each other, and there's nothing. Yeah. Well, I think the utility of it is, there's so much. We've already seen it. We have everything from behaviors that are both do's and don'ts for listening, like, what are deterrents for people to, like, what immediately shuts people down if you do these things. So, like, at a very rudimentary level, we've got, like, put your phone down and won't judge and stuff like that. So we've got very, very functional baseline behaviors. But in addition to that, we have sentiments and perspectives that you can use to build programming around listening that leads to faith formation. Like, we've got data that supports, here are the approaches, here are the types of things folks are connecting with and listening to, or paying attention to, to get to the next step. So, we have a lot of assets coming out about this, including some fact sheets that I'm building right now. So that's top of mind, about, faith is the dependent variable for listening, and how listening is an influence to trust and deeper relationships. And the questions and the way that we ask them, because we're social scientists, give you a baseline for actual behaviors, not just like pie in the sky philosophy about listening. So it's pretty utilitarian already.
I agree. The part of that is just due to the amount of data we have. The margin of error on this is like 3% either way, so it's highly reliable. But it is, I think, directional at a national level. If you're doing ministry on the ground, I wouldn't upend my entire ministry just based on this one survey, but I think it becomes another one of these data points that you take in as you're thinking, what's the best way to reach, my adult small groups or, my Sunday school classes or whatever. If you sort of feel that tug and you see this data and they're lining up together, then maybe that's a good reason to do some real serious examination about what's going to resonate most with the people in your community. The other thing I think that I know I've heard people saying already is that, it gives them the confidence and the actual information to take back to their bosses when they want to make a shift. They've already seen the effectiveness of some of these relational tactics and they want to move more in that direction. They said that this has become sort of exactly what they need to be able to convince the higher ups that this is what should be done.
It's proof. It's proof.
Yeah.
And the way that we ask the question sets people up to not, again, you said this, you indicated this, but not to upend whole systems of programs that are already in existence, but as like something to integrate, as something, even the way that we frame some of the questions is like, you don't need to dismantle faith communities. You just need to listen.
Right.
You need to.
That's exactly right.
You need to have your faith community focusing on listening instead of just whatever, in addition, integrated into the things that you're already doing. So it's a bonus.
Well, and this has been a bonus episode. So thank you so much, Megan, for the data nerds and for the methodologists out there who are just sort of curious about how something like this comes together. This is the sort of like I said, the peek behind the curtain. This took about 6 months from beginning to final data collection and analysis. And then we spent a couple of months putting all that together in a package that was, downloadable for free on our website. It's, this is right in line with all of our entire philosophy here at Future Faith, which is that we're going to try and make as much of this as free as we possibly can, including the resources, including the data, all of it there. It's all for you. We find other ways to fund it, as opposed to making, asking people to pay directly for it. And so far, that seems to be working. We'll keep doing it as long as we possibly can.
Exactly.
It certainly is the approach that we believe in. So thanks, Megan. Really appreciate you being here. Until next time, this has been the Future of Faith podcast.
You have been listening to the Future of Faith podcast, produced by Future of Faith with original music by me, Keedron Boston. You can learn more about the Sacred Listening Study and all the amazing things going on in relational ministry at www.futureoffaith.org. And don't forget to sign up for our newsletter, where we feature incredible ministries, sacred listeners, and cutting-edge research, all for free, delivered right to your inbox. Thanks for listening. This is the Future of Faith.